The HMS Cobra cut through the North Sea like a blade through silk. It was November 1901, and the British destroyer represented the pinnacle of naval engineering, sleek, fast, and deadly. Commander Arthur Wood stood on the bridge, watching his crew work with practiced efficiency. They were returning from speed trials, and the Cobra had exceeded all expectations, reaching an impressive 34 knots. "Magnificent vessel, isn't she?" Woods remarked to his first officer, Lieutenant James Collins. The younger man nodded enthusiastically, gripping the rail as the ship surged forward through moderate swells. But something was wrong. Deep in the engine room, Chief Engineer Thomas Brighton felt at first a subtle vibration that seemed to pulse through the hull. He'd served on dozens of ships, and his instincts were screaming that this wasn't normal. The vibration had a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat, but irregular and growing stronger. "Reduce speed by 5 knots, he ordered his team. The vibration lessened but didn't disappear. On the bridge, Commander Woods received the engine room's message with irritation. What's Brighton worried about now? The ship's performing beautifully. "Sir, he says there's unusual vibration in the hull structure," Collins reported, reading the message slate. Woods dismissed it with a wave. "These new ships always have minor teething problems. Maintain current speed. We're making excellent time." In the engine room, Brighton's concern deepened. The vibration was changing, becoming more aggressive. He could see it now. The metal plates along the hull were flexing in ways they shouldn't. The rivets holding the ship together were moving ever so slightly in their sockets. "Sir, we need to stop the engines." Brighton called up the voice tube to the bridge. "This vibration pattern is dangerous." Wood's response was curt. "Negative. Maintain speed." 20 minutes later, at exactly 6:47 p.m., the HMS Cobra broke in half. The ship didn't explode. There was no enemy action, no collision with rocks or mines. The vessel simply folded in the middle, as if an invisible giant had snapped it like a twig. The forward section rose into the air, propeller still spinning, before sliding beneath the waves. The aft section followed moments later. Of the 79 men aboard, only 12 survived. William Froude Jr. wasn't supposed to be the hero of this story. At 47 years old, he was a mid-level mathematician, working the night shift at the Admiralty's Research Department in Glasgow. While other engineers worked prestigious day positions, William preferred the quiet hours after dark when he could think without interruption. His office was a cramped space in the basement of the Fairfield Shipbuilding Complex, surrounded by filing cabinets stuffed with technical reports that nobody else wanted to read. The walls were covered with charts, graphs, and equations scribbled on every available surface. His colleagues called him the mole behind his back, always underground, always digging through old data. William didn't mind. He'd inherited his father's obsession with hydrodynamics and ship behavior. His father, the original William Froude, had been a pioneering naval architect who'd made significant contributions to understanding how ships move through water. But the elder Froude had died in 1879, leaving behind unanswered questions about ship vibrations that haunted his son. On the night of March 15, 1943, William was reviewing casualty reports from the previous 6 months. The numbers were staggering. 17 Allied vessels had suffered catastrophic structural failures. Over 800 crew members were dead or missing. The official reports blamed battle damage, fatigue, or poor construction, but William saw something else in the data. He spread the reports across his desk, arranging them chronologically. Each ship had experienced the same sequence of events before breaking apart. Unusual vibrations reported by engine room staff, flexing of hull plates, and then sudden catastrophic failure. The pattern was identical to the HMS Cobra disaster from 4 decades earlier. "It's not random," William muttered to himself, lighting another cigarette. "There's a frequency here, a resonance." He pulled out his father's old notebooks, yellow with age and filled with observations about propeller design and water flow. The elder Froude had suspected that propellers could create dangerous vibrations under certain conditions, but he died before proving his theory. William began calculating. He knew that every physical object had a natural frequency, the rate at which it wanted to vibrate. When external forces matched that natural frequency, resonance occurred, amplified vibrations exponentially. It was the same principle that allowed opera singers to shatter wine glasses with their voices. Could the same thing be happening to ships? He worked through the night, filling page after page with equations. The mathematics were brutal. Complex differential equations involving fluid dynamics, structural mechanics, and harmonic analysis. But gradually, a picture emerged. The propellers were the key. When a propeller spun through water, it created pressure waves. These waves pulsed at a frequency determined by the propeller's rotation speed and blade count. If that pulse frequency matched the natural frequency of the ship's hull structure, resonance would occur. The hull would begin vibrating with increasing amplitude until the structural bonds, the rivets and welds holding the ship together, failed catastrophically. It was an invisible killer. The vibrations built up slowly, giving just enough warning for engineers to notice something wrong, but not enough time to understand the danger before disaster struck. William's hands were shaking as he realized the implications. Every ship was potentially vulnerable. The faster naval vessels traveled, the more likely they were to hit that deadly resonance frequency. The push for speed in warship design had inadvertently created a death trap. But why weren't all ships affected? He dug deeper into the casualty reports, comparing them with technical specifications. The pattern became clearer. Ships with certain propeller designs and hull configurations were far more susceptible. Three-bladed propellers spinning at specific RPM ranges were particularly dangerous when paired with hull structures that had natural frequencies in the same range. It was like a terrible lottery. Most ships sailed safely, but those unlucky enough to have a wrong combination of propeller and hull characteristics were doomed. William looked at the clock. It was 4:30 a.m. He'd been working for 9 hours straight, and his calculations covered every surface in the office. But he had it, the mathematical proof of what was killing Allied ships. The question now was whether anyone would listen to a night shift mathematician with a theory that contradicted decades of naval architecture. He gathered his papers and headed upstairs to find his supervisor, Commander Harold Mitchell. The day shift was beginning to arrive, and engineers in crisp uniforms gave him curious looks as he emerged from the basement, disheveled and wild-eyed, clutching his calculations. Mitchell's office was on the 3rd floor. William knocked urgently. "Come in," a gruff voice called. Commander Mitchell looked up from his morning tea with annoyance. He was a practical man who'd spent 30 years in the Navy and had little patience for theoretical mathematics. "Froude, what are you doing here at this hour?" William spread his calculations across Mitchell's desk, talking rapidly. "Sir, I know it's destroying our ships. It's resonance vibration caused by propeller-induced pressure pulses, matching hull natural frequencies. The mathematics are conclusive. We can predict which vessels are at risk and modify them before." "Slow down," Mitchell interrupted, holding up his hand. "You're telling me that propellers are sinking ships? Not torpedoes, not structural defects, but vibrations?" "Yes, sir. The evidence is undeniable." Mitchell studied the equation skeptically. "This is your father's old theory, isn't it? The one that was never proven?" William felt his heart sink. "Sir, the mathematics are just mathematics, Froude. I need evidence, not equations. Can you prove this is actually happening?" William paused. That was the problem. His theory explained everything perfectly, but it had no direct physical evidence, just numbers and dead sailors. "Give me access to a ship showing vibration problems," William said. "Let me measure the frequencies directly. I can prove it." Mitchell considered this for a long moment, sipping his tea. The naval inquiry that followed was brutal and inconclusive. How could a brand-new warship, built to the highest standards, simply break apart in moderate seas? The builders blamed the design. The designers blamed the materials. Everyone pointed fingers, but nobody had real answers. The tragedy might have remained an isolated mystery, except it wasn't isolated at all. 3 years later, the HMS Viper suffered the same fate. Broken in half by forces that left investigators baffled. Then the HMS Gala. Then commercial vessels. The pattern was undeniable, but the cause remained invisible, like a ghost haunting the world's shipyards. By 1940, with World War II raging across the Atlantic, The problem had become critical. Allied ships were disappearing not from enemy action, but from catastrophic structural failures. The losses were mounting, and naval architects were desperate for answers. Enter William Froude Jr. Commander Mitchell's decision came 3 days later. William would get his chance, but under conditions that made success nearly impossible. He'd be assigned to the HMS Sentinel, a destroyer that had reported unusual vibrations during its last patrol. The ship was scheduled to depart in 72 hours for convoy escort duty in the North Atlantic. William would have exactly one voyage to gather his evidence and prove his theory, or the Navy would dismiss his work entirely. One trip, Froude. Mitchell had said coldly, "Don't waste it." William arrived at the Glasgow docks on a gray morning with equipment cobbled together from whatever he could requisite. Sensitive accelerometers designed for aircraft testing, recording devices, and a portable oscilloscope that weighed 40 pounds. His assistant, a young engineering student named Robert Hendricks, helped carry the gear up the gangway. Captain David Sullivan met them on deck with obvious displeasure. He was a veteran commander with a weathered face and no interest in having a mathematician aboard his ship during wartime operations. "You'll stay out of the way," Sullivan said bluntly. "My crew has real work to do. You can take measurements or whatever it is you do, but the moment you interfere with ship operations, you're confined to quarters. Understood?" "Yes, sir," William replied. They sailed at dawn the next day, joining a convoy of merchant vessels bound for Halifax. The North Atlantic in April was brutal. Towering swells and biting wind that made every movement on deck treacherous. William spent the first day installing his instruments in the engine room, trying to ignore the skeptical looks from the crew. Chief Engineer Patrick O'Brien was more cooperative than his captain, mainly because he felt the vibrations himself and knew something was wrong. "It starts around 18 knots, O'Brien explained, shouting over the engine noise. "You feel it through the deck plates first, then it spreads through the whole structure. The faster we go, the worse it gets." William nodded, attaching accelerometers to key points on the hull structure. "I need you to run the ship through different speeds. I have to find the exact frequency where the vibration peaks." "Captain won't like that. We're supposed to maintain formation with the convoy." "Then we do it at night, during the captain's authorized speed test for maintenance," William suggested. "Surely routine engine checks are normal procedure?" O'Brien grinned. "You're sneakier than you look, mathematician." That night, with Captain Sullivan's reluctant permission for routine engine testing, William got his data. As the HMS Sentinel accelerated through various speeds, his instruments recorded everything. The oscilloscope traced dancing lines across its screen, while the accelerometers measured vibration intensity at different points throughout the hull. At 17 knots, the vibrations were minimal. At 18 knots, they began to build. At 19 knots, William saw what he'd been looking for: a sharp spike in vibration amplitude at a frequency of precisely 8.3 hertz. "Hold this speed," William called to O'Brien. The chief engineer maintained 19 knots, while William took measurements throughout the ship. The vibrations were concentrated in the aft section, radiating from propeller shafts. His calculations had predicted this exact frequency based on the Sentinel's 3-bladed propeller design and rotation speed. But it was what happened at 21 knots that confirmed his worst fears. As the ship accelerated past 20 knots, the vibrations suddenly intensified. The frequency shifted to 9.1 hertz, and the entire aft structure began to resonate. William could see it in his instrument readings. The amplitude was doubling every few seconds. The hull was being torn apart from the inside. "Reduce speed now," William shouted. O'Brien didn't hesitate. He'd felt the change too, the way the ship suddenly started shaking like it wanted to tear itself to pieces. As the engines throttled back, the vibrations decreased, but slowly, reluctantly, as if the ship was fighting to destroy itself. William's hands were shaking as he reviewed the oscilloscope readings. They'd been seconds away from catastrophic failure. If O'Brien had maintained that speed for another minute, the HMS Sentinel would have joined the HMS Cobra at the bottom of the ocean. The next morning, William presented his findings to Captain Sullivan in the ship's wardroom. He spread out graphs and calculations showing exactly what had happened. Your ship has a critical resonance frequency at 21 knots, William explained. The propeller creates pressure pulses that match the natural frequency of your hull structure. If you maintain that speed for more than 90 seconds, structural failure is inevitable. Sullivan studied the graphs with a hardening expression. You're telling me I can't run my ship at full combat speed? Not without modifications, no. The propeller needs to be rebalanced or replaced with a four-bladed design that shifts the pulse frequency. Alternatively, structural reinforcements could change the hull's natural frequency enough to avoid resonance. This is one ship, Froude. What about the rest of the fleet? William pulled out a thick folder of calculations. I've analyzed the technical specifications for every destroyer and cruiser class in the Atlantic Fleet. 47 vessels share similar design characteristics to the ships that have already failed. They're all at risk. Sullivan's face went pale. 47 ships? With approximately 800 crew members per vessel. Yes, sir. That's why I needed this evidence. The mathematics predicted the problem, but I had to prove it was real. For the first time, Sullivan looked at William with something other than contempt. You really believe you can save those crews? I know I can, sir, but I need the Admiralty to listen. I need them to ground the at-risk vessels and implement modifications before it's too late. Sullivan picked up the ship's radio handset. I'll get you your audience, Froude, but you better be right about this. Because if you're wrong, you'll have grounded half our destroyer fleet for nothing. William thought about the HMS Cobra, broken in half with 67 men lost. He thought about the 17 ships that had failed in the past 6 months, and the 800 families who'd received letters saying their loved ones were missing at sea. I'm not wrong, Captain. The emergency meeting at the Admiralty took place in a room William had never seen before, a vast oak-paneled chamber where the most senior naval officers made decisions that affected thousands of lives. William stood at the head of a massive table, his charts and calculations spread before him, facing 20 men who had the power to accept or reject his findings. Admiral Sir Charles Whitworth sat at the far end, his uniform heavy with medals from 2 wars. He was 72 years old and represented the old guard of naval architecture, men who trusted experience over equations. Mr. Froude, Whitworth began, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Captain Sullivan's report is extraordinary. You're claiming that nearly 50 vessels in our fleet are at risk of catastrophic failure due to propeller vibrations. Do you understand the implications of what you're suggesting? Yes, Admiral. I'm suggesting we ground those vessels immediately and implement emergency modifications. A murmur ran through the room. Commander Harrison, the chief naval architect, leaned forward aggressively. That's impossible. We're fighting a war. We can't simply remove 50 destroyers from active duty based on mathematical theory. Do you have any idea what that would do to our convoy protection capabilities? William had anticipated this resistance. Sir, those 50 destroyers are already removed from duty. They're just waiting to sink. The HMS Cobra, the HMS Viper, the 17 vessels we've lost in the past 6 months, they all exhibit the same vibration patterns before failure. My measurements on the Sentinel prove the resonance effect is real. One ship, Harrison countered. You tested one ship under controlled conditions. That's hardly conclusive evidence for a fleet-wide problem. William pulled out another folder, this one containing testimonies he gathered over the past week. I've interviewed survivors from 4 different vessels that suffered structural failures. Every single one reported the same sequence, unusual vibrations at specific speeds, followed by sudden catastrophic breakup. The engine room crews knew something was wrong, but they didn't have the framework to understand what they were experiencing. He distributed copies of the testimonies around the table. Chief Engineer Thomas Brighton from the HMS Cobra reported the vibrations 20 minutes before the ship broke apart. He requested reduced speed, but his captain overruled him. 12 men survived. 67 died. That pattern has repeated 17 times in the past 6 months alone. Admiral Whitworth read through the testimony in silence. When he looked up, his expression was troubled. Even if you're correct, Mr. Froude, the solution you're proposing is logistically impossible. How long would these modifications take? For propeller replacement, approximately 8 days per vessel in dry dock. For structural reinforcement, 12 days. We have the facilities in Glasgow, Liverpool, and Portsmouth to process multiple ships simultaneously. Commander Mitchell, who had accompanied William to the meeting, spoke up. Admiral, I've reviewed Froude's calculations. The mathematics are sound. His father pioneered this field of study, and the son has taken it further. If there's even a chance he's right, we can't ignore it. And if he's wrong, Harrison demanded, we pull 50 destroyers out of service, expose our convoys to U-boat attacks, and wasted months of shipyard capacity on unnecessary modifications. The cost in lives could be catastrophic. William felt the room turning against him. These were practical men facing an impossible decision: accept an invisible threat based on mathematical theory, or continue operations and hope the casualties didn't worsen. Then Admiral Whitworth asked a question that changed everything. Mr. Froude, can you predict which ship will fail next? The room fell silent. William felt every eye upon him. This was the moment where theory met reality, where mathematics had to prove itself in the most brutal way possible. He walked to the large map of the Atlantic on the wall, studying the positions of various fleet elements. Then he pulled out his list of at-risk vessels and cross-referenced their current operational status. The HMS Cavalier, William said quietly. She's currently escorting convoy HX 229, 3-bladed propeller, hull structure identical to the Cobra. She's been reporting minor vibration issues for the past month, but nothing serious enough to warrant dry dock. Based on her operational pattern, she'll be running at sustained high speed in approximately 4 days when the convoy enters the mid-Atlantic gap, where U-boat activity is heaviest. He turned to face the Admiral. If my theory is correct, the HMS Cavalier will suffer catastrophic structural failure within the next week. If I'm wrong, then you can dismiss everything I've said and return the fleet to normal operations. You're gambling with lives, Harrison said harshly. No, sir, I'm trying to save them. The gamble is doing nothing and hoping the problem goes away. Admiral Whitworth stood, his decision made. Commander Harrison, send an immediate message to the HMS Cavalier. She is to reduce speed to 15 knots maximum and detach from convoy duty. Route her to the nearest port for inspection. Harrison looked shocked. Admiral, that will leave HX 229 under strength during its most vulnerable passage. Then assign a replacement destroyer. But Froude gets his test case. If the Cavalier shows the structural issues he predicts, we proceed with fleet-wide modifications. If his theory is wrong, we return to normal operations and Mr. Froude finds a new career. Are we clear? Yes, Admiral. The next 5 days were agony for William. He returned to his basement office, unable to sleep, reviewing his calculations over and over, terrified he'd made an error. If the Cavalier reached port safely with no issues, his theory would be dismissed. Worse, if another ship failed while he'd pulled the Cavalier out of service, those deaths would be on his conscience. On the 6th day, Commander Mitchell came down to the basement. His face was grave. The Cavalier reached Portsmouth this morning, he said. The shipyard engineers have completed their inspection. William's heart was pounding, and they found 37 cracked rivets in the aft hull section. The structural analysis shows the hull was approximately 48 hours away from catastrophic failure. If she'd maintained high-speed operations with the convoy, she would have broken apart in the mid-Atlantic with all hands lost. William sat down heavily, relief and horror washing over him in equal measure. He'd been right. But being right meant facing the reality of how close they'd come to losing another ship. There's more, Mitchell continued. Admiral Whitworth has ordered immediate inspections of all vessels matching your risk profile. Those showing structural stress are being pulled for emergency modifications. The shipyards are working around the clock. You've been assigned a team of 50 engineers to oversee the program. How many ships showed damage? 23 so far. All of them were days or weeks away from failure. Froude, you've just saved over 800 lives. Probably more once we account for future incidents prevented. William thought about his father, who'd suspected this problem existed but died before proving it. He thought about Thomas Brighton, who'd felt the vibrations on the Cobra, but didn't have the knowledge to explain what they meant. He thought about all the engineers and sailors who'd known something was wrong, but couldn't make anyone listen. "It wasn't just me," William said quietly. "Every engineer who reported vibrations, every sailor who felt something was wrong, they were all pieces of the puzzle. I just had the mathematics to prove what they already knew." Over the next 6 months, the Admiralty's emergency modification program transformed the fleet. Propellers were rebalanced or replaced. Hull structures were reinforced. Naval architects incorporated vibration analysis into every new ship design. The catastrophic failures stopped. By the war's end, not a single vessel lost to structural resonance carried William Froude Jr. as modifications. The final count was impossible to calculate precisely, but naval historians estimate that William's work saved between 800 and 1,200 lives. Crews who sailed into dangerous waters and came home safely, never knowing how close they'd come to joining the HMS Cobra at the bottom of the ocean. William returned to his night shift in the basement, preferring the quiet hours where he could think. But now, when young engineers came to him with problems that seemed impossible, with observations that didn't fit conventional wisdom, he listened, because he knew that sometimes the most important breakthroughs came from people willing to work through the night, chasing invisible patterns that everyone else had missed. The propeller equation, the mathematics of resonance that had killed so many, became a cornerstone of naval architecture. Every ship design since 1943 accounts for the deadly frequencies that William Froude Jr. discovered in his basement office during the dark days of World War II. His name isn't widely known. There are no statues, no grand memorials. But somewhere in the North Atlantic, 800 sailors who never knew they were in danger sailed safely home because a night shift mathematician refused to ignore what the numbers were telling him. Sometimes, saving lives doesn't require heroism. Sometimes it just requires someone willing to do the math.